I'm so excited. And, just first of all, thanks for being here, especially during this crazy time of coronavirus and COVID-19 and all the stress that's going on in the world. I just appreciate you taking time out and, just meeting us. This is amazing.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Hey, and on that note, since I just opened up the floor for coronavirus, how is the wine industry and then just your business in general doing with wine sales and just how has that all been going for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, our business is booming. People are drinking. They're starting earlier. They're drinking later. And our wines are healthier, and they make you feel better, and they're lower alcohol. So people are really in pursuit of, a healthier alternative since they're drinking more, staying
Mhm.
at home. So our business has done great. I mean, we're very fortunate. We would happily turn it all back to make this go away, but we've just been very lucky that, that and very abundant during this period because we have a product that people want and they're drinking more of it. And so it's been terrific for us. Not personally, it's not terrific, because we're all caught at
Yeah.
home and we're like, there's nothing to do. And, our business has done great. Also, our productivity has soared. I think,
Oh, wow.
we've gotten amazing projects done. And uh, actually, people are getting more work output than I think they did at the office. And I think people, not that we want them to
Yeah.
do this, but I think people are working longer because and take fewer breaks. They just because they're bored. They don't have anything to do.
Yeah.
And so productivity has skyrocketed. We're very much looking forward to returning back as a group because it's just part of our culture. I mean, we meditate together every day, for an hour, and we do that via Zoom now, which is just not the same as having collective consciousness in the same room.
Yeah.
We're very much looking forward to. Plus, we like cook, entertain, party on a regular basis, and we have company dinners where most of us are cooks, where we get together usually a couple of times a month. For like big dinner parties, which we haven't done since February, or January. And
Mhm.
so there's a lot of missing pieces to our culture that that we that we don't have at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, just to start all the listeners off, the people that don't know you, like how did you even get started in the wine business? Was it something that I went to UC Davis. They have classes there where you can study viticulture. Was it something that you studied? Like, what was the day that you realized, like, yes, this is what I want to do. I want to be in the wine business.
Well, it was kind of an accident. Dry farm wines wasn't meant to be a business. It really was an accident from my pursuit of trying to find a healthier way to drink and a better
Mm,
way to drink. And so I've been a lifelong wine aficionado. I made some wine in 2005 in Napa Valley where I live, just a hobby project, meaning that I lost money on it. But, you know, I've just been a lifelong wine lover. Been drinking wine since I was 9 years old. And, um,
since
and
you were
just,
9.
yeah, since I was nine. No.
Now, did you grow up in the United States? Because I feel like that might be very European, almost like something to do that. But
Well, no,
I
I did grow up in the United States, but my
okay,
parents shared wine with me, when not a lot, but
yeah.
on holidays and kind of special occasions, that kind of thing. But so, I had, and then I drank spirits. I haven't drank spirits for like over 25 years now, but then I drank spirits and kind of partied through when I was younger, and then I started experimenting with the ketogenic diet about 6 or 7 years ago, and I found that I couldn't drink. I don't know for a combination of reasons why, but I couldn't drink anymore. I just felt terrible. I was getting drunk super easy.
Yeah.
People report having less alcohol tolerance with the keto diet. I don't. So I really thought it was just the higher alcohol. So American wines are average nearly 15% alcohol by volume, and so in my pursuit, I started looking for lower alcohol wines, and from that, I accidentally just stumbled upon the natural wine revolution, which was really just getting underway in central France.
Mm.
And nobody knew what a natural wine was then. And the term today is confusing to many people who don't know what it is. And we can talk about the difference between natural wines and commercially available wines. But so I stumbled upon the natural wine movement quite by accident, and I discovered an importer who was an American living in Paris. His name is Josh Adler, who used to live in San Francisco. And I discovered his wines and just thought they were extraordinary. And then I stumbled upon a podcast when I was searching for information about him. I found a podcast that he did on natural wines and the whole ethos and philosophy around it and so on. It was like very appealing to me. So I started pursuing natural wines. They were very hard to find at the time. There was one tiny retail shop in San Francisco. And then not all natural wines are lower in alcohol. So then I started doing lab testing and focusing on low alcohol, sugar free, mold free, like a whole bunch of different lab tests. And then I started sharing these wines that I liked with performance friends of mine, other athletes and friends that I had. They're like,
Yeah.
wow, this is great. You can drink this. You don't get a hangover. You don't have the traditional kind of wine head, like no brain fog. It's like, this is
Yeah.
awesome. Where do you get these? And I was like, well, you can't. So
They don't
from
exist.
they exist only if you go through this protocol I'm going through, lab testing, and and like, but so then I was like, well, maybe this could be a business. And at the time, I was looking for a new business. I've been self-employed since I was 17, so I was unemployable. I was between businesses, and so I was like, well, maybe this can be a business. So then I called Dave Asprey, and we became that year, about 5 years ago, we became the official wine for Bulletproof
Yeah, I remember that.
and the Bulletproof Conference, and the rest is kind of history. Then I was on Bulletproof Radio and Mark Sisson's Primal, Blueprint, and now a couple hundred podcasts later, and some Rob Wolf, and so it just kind of, initially most of our sales came from affiliate endorsements, right?
Mhm.
Being in books and being written about doctors and doctor endorsements and so on and so forth. Today, much of our growth is fueled through social media, but at the time it was really about these endorsements that people would make, and because they would experience the wine and then they
Yeah.
would meet us and they could see that that we were truly dedicated to a path of health and wellness and a higher life. And so, it was very easy for people to sort of believe our story.
Yeah. It's not just the wine, it's kinda like, you behind the wine. It's the culture and everything else that you bring and the energy that you bring, to what your product, right? To what you're delivering.
Well, we live a very different life than most businesses. I mentioned to you earlier, first of all, we don't meet until 10 o'clock in the morning. So everyone has the morning free. We also live in a pretty small town. And of course, now we're not going to the office during COVID, but normally when we are, no one lives more than 10 minutes from the office, and there's no commute, there's no traffic or anything. So we meet, don't meet until 10, or now it's Zooming.
Yeah.
We Zoom at 10 o'clock. And the reason that we don't meet until later, because most businesses, in the prior businesses I've had, we start at like 8 or 8:30, right? Because
Yeah.
we want to get an early start and get lots of stuff done during the day.
That's
But
right.
what I found was that people actually get more done in less time, if they start with the right mindset.
Yeah.
And so, we want everybody to, these are not people who are sleeping until 9:30 and then coming in. I mean, these are people who are getting up at 5 or 6 in the morning and having spiritual practices, individual meditation practices, time with their family, fitness practices, running, going to the gym in non COVID times.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I want everybody to arrive at 10 rested and at peace, right? And had a chance to practice their rituals or spend time with their family or whatever their choices are. And then we meditate together. Today it's on Zoom, but typically it's in our meditation room, which is the largest room in our building.
That's so
And all
cool.
we do is meditate. This is how committed we are to this. So we have an hour of meditation and gratitude practices and journaling and other various practices of visualizations or affirmations about living an optimized life. And so this goes on from 10 to 11 or maybe 11:15 sometimes. And so then we don't start creating, what we call work. We don't start creating until, 11:15 or 11:30, and we stop
Mm.
creating sometime between 5 and 6.
Yeah.
So it's a relatively short workday by corporate standards, right? But nonetheless, it's highly productive, a lot of high quality work product, and it results in, a very financially successful business, although I don't consider financial success the apex of success. I mean, the apex of success is living a joyful and peaceful life. But
Yeah.
we are able to execute, a very effective business organization in, 6 hours a day.
Yeah. That's amazing. And one of the things that I thought was always really amazing about you that I heard on other podcasts is that, you don't just, it's not like, for example, like I don't know how the business structure is set up, right, or the hierarchy, but it's not like it's Todd White and then the CFO and then like it's not like just like this secret or not secret, but the higher up people in the company. The people that are meditating with you, it's everybody. It's the farm worker. It's everybody you have from like
Yeah,
the
it's
people that
warehouse workers. It's everyone, and I think for the warehouse workers, it's super poignant to watch these kids who are typically Hispanic.
hmm
They come in initially, and it's a little bit freaked out for them, right?
yeah,
Because it's a very vulnerable setting, and they've never been in a vulnerable setting. Most of them. You see, at
yeah,
most companies that have warehouse workers, they're just objects. Management doesn't
yeah,
even know who they are, right? Because they're just in the warehouse. And so, we have an amazing warehouse crew that puts out amazing productivity in large part because, they're committed to these practices. We think meditation is the single reason for our extraordinary success, right? So, I mean, we grew 600x in the first 3 years.
wow,
Crazy. Yeah. So anyway, that kind of growth rate, and we're still even today, 5 years later, we're after having grown extraordinarily over the last few years, we're still growing at 100% a year. So that kind of growth rate is very could be, very stressful on a team, but
yeah,
we're able to operate with, in perfect unity. And but a lot of that is also attributed to our hiring practices. So the interview process for us takes just over 2 months, right? So it's a big commitment from the prospect.
yeah.
We
Talk
consider
about. Sorry, go
hiring,
ahead.
no, we consider hiring the single most important thing we do,
Yeah,
because you know if you hire the right person, they manage themselves, right? Because
mm,
they feel a an obligation to self to produce their highest outcome. That's just who they are as a person. Finding those people is very difficult. And then delineating those people from the people who are just good salesmen when they're trying to sell you on themselves, delineating all that is why it takes so long and we have so many parts in the process, right? So just in order to apply, the candidate, an average candidate, just to make application, has to answer a 15-question questionnaire that takes a good candidate usually 4 to 6 hours to complete. That's before we'll even talk to you.
yeah,
So, and our reasoning for that is that if you're not willing to invest on the front side of how impressive you are, you're not likely to deliver on the backside either. And so it's a self-selecting process to weed people out who are not serious about their craft.
yeah. I love that, man. That's great. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Everybody in your organization is ketogenic, correct? Correct? I don't know if you're even allowed to say that, so maybe.
No, 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 we can't.
Okay.
The majority, the majority, or what I would call um, modified keto, low carb, is the majority. Um, at least on the professional staff. In the warehouse, don't really know because the warehouse is just a little bit different crew.
Yeah.
But Initially, we were all keto,
Yeah.
and now I would say most people are modified to low carb and
Yeah.
not. We have several of us. I'm keto. Um, the the many people are, and many
Yeah.
people are continuing blood testing. But then there's some that are just they're all fit,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
but some are what I call a modified ketogenic or low carb diet.
Very cool. How did you create this culture? I mean, like, how did was it did some I always think of like how we have mentors in life and other people that kind of help help guide us, right, get us there. Was it a book that you read? Was it a mentor? Or was it just you that you just kind of an amalgamation of things? And I just find it to be an amazing culture. And like you said earlier, creating a culture like this, that's why you're doing so well. And so I'm just curious how you created that.
Well, no, it was really an experimentation, and the creation came from failure, right? So my last company was not successful. It was kind of a drastic failure. Lost a lot of money, like huge interruption to my life. But a large part of that failure was the wrong people.
Ah.
It wasn't the entire. I mean, the cause of the failure, of course, is 100% of me. But part of my failure in that business was hiring the wrong people.
Mm,
And so that it left an indelible impression on me that I just thought there had to be a better way, right? And
yeah.
so that was really the beginning of what we call the experiment. It is an experiment. We're experimenting with it every day. There are many challenges with having a, a mindful culture. There are many challenges in leading with love and light in business. Many challenges. And there are many decisions that have to be made. Let's say you have someone who, for whatever reason in their life, is underperforming, right? Well, if we're leading with love in a community of family, this becomes a little bit more challenging than in a traditional business environment where you would just, write them up, start following a sequence of fear-based tactics, right?
Yeah.
You get them to turn around. So, we have a process, and it doesn't happen often, but we have a process. We had one about a month ago, and before that, I'll tell you what the process is. We had one about a month ago, and before that, it had probably been maybe a year. But we have a process called the intervention. So it's where, after there's been corrective encouragement for um, a person. Again, this doesn't happen often, but after there's been corrective courses and encouragement through corrective encouragement, then if that's not working, then we have what we call an intervention. That's sort of the last ditch effort
Oh, wow.
to 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 bring change. We have virtually no turnover. Only two people have left voluntarily in the history of the company,
Wow.
and both of them moved out of state. And so, and all the early people are still there. But so the top six executives, and we don't really have titles, but the top six senior people in the company invite this person to a private meeting, and things get real raw. So
Yeah,
like typically one or many people may become emotional because these are people that we love. These are people that we're close friends with. These are always
yeah,
people that we have a lot of respect, and and they typically there's something going on in their life that is outside of our domain.
of
There's
course.
something going on in their life that is affecting their life performance, right? And
Yeah.
so this is like our opportunity to like shake the baby, if you will, and say, hey,
Yeah.
this is like really kind of serious for us. And this is like, you know, we have a code that we call self directed responsibility. So, our way of life, our culture of creation only works if everyone is self-directed in their responsibility. So they don't require
Yeah.
oversight. They don't require a lot of management. They don't require a lot of motivation because they're just people who enjoy creating, right?
Yeah.
And so finding those people, because the difficult thing about finding those people is that generally speaking, those people, that type of person, what I call the doer, right?
Yeah.
They just got to be doing, right? They're like the person who offers to carry things for you or opens the door for you. They're just doers, right?
Yeah.
Because they at some point in their life, either inherent or they were taught or a combination of both, they they just became a doer. It typically happens quite young in life, right? They're just who they are.
Yeah.
And so finding those people are very difficult. The reason why they're difficult to find is because they're always employed. They're not looking for a job because doers aren't looking for a job because they're busy doing their job.
Yeah.
And so either that or they're self-employed. And
Right.
so, the self-employment economy, is so easy to be self-employed today. And so this finding these people, is very difficult. We typically find them through either friends of friends off of our email list or
Interesting.
social media because they're just never unemployed. I can't remember us ever hiring anybody who's unemployed,
Yeah.
right? Because doers are always employed. And typically, they're well compensated and they're typically taken care of okay because they're one of the few people that do anything in the organization.
Yeah.
It's the 80-20 rule. In most organizations, 20% of the people are doing 80% of the work
Right.
or 80% of the effectiveness, right?
Right.
Because work is not effectiveness. Being busy doesn't mean that you're effective, right? So anyway,
Right.
they're very difficult to locate, but we that's the reason we have this super long, very thorough project after project, presentation after presentation they make. And then if most people relocate because the labor pool in Napa is very small, um, other than the warehouse, 95% of people that work with us are relocate from somewhere else.
Yeah.
And if they're relocating with a significant other, then we also interview them.
Wow.
And yeah, it's probably the most surprising part of our interview protocol when I tell people that we interview the significant other.
This
N-
interview process reminds me of like police or FBI or like they do the same kind of stuff, and like those backgrounds are like 6 months. So this is pretty cool.
Well, when we interview the spouse, which we interview the significant other, whether they're married or not, but when we interview the significant other, which we do twice, right? The first time with the two of them together. Well, both times they're both together. But so interviewing the significant other tells me several things. First of all, who you choose to spend your life with tells me a lot about who you are, right? And then when I interview the two of you together, I want to see how you interact. I want to see what your
Yeah.
dynamic is. And then we want to understand how excited they are to be relocating. And we also want them to know who we are,
Yeah.
right? And for them to understand how intense we are and
Yeah.
how committed we are to our culture. And, if they're not a fit to our culture, then we're not going to be able to hire the candidate, right? It's just impossible. I mean, we've passed on, I think, of maybe two very solid candidates because we just didn't think the spouse was a fit, right?
Wow.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh,
so it's just this is how it goes. Yeah.
yeah. That's awesome. So yeah, I mean, for you, company culture and is from hiring good people. I love that. That's great. Backtracking now, back to wine. We kind of got off topic on the wine. So going back, just kind of explain to everybody like what makes dry farm wines special, because I think when most people go into the store, we look for fancy labels. We look for big names that we know, like Coppola, Mondavi, We look for names like Napa Valley. That's kind of, and then price is a factor. So, um, yeah, just kind of tell us what makes a dry farm wine special.
Well, I think to tell that story, you have to start with what's wrong with those commercial wines that you named and thousands of others. And it comes down to money and greed. And so here's some of the dark secrets of the wine business that the wine industry doesn't want you to know and spends a lot of lobby money in Washington, D.C. to keep you from finding this out. So, first of all, the same thing that's happened in our food supply has happened in our wine supply. That's been massive corporate consolidation driven by money and greed, not trying to make wine better or healthier, but faster and more profitable,
Yep.
right? And so that's sort of that's kind of the what's happened. So the top three wine companies in the United States make 52% of US wines. And the top
Wow.
30 companies make over 70% of US wines. Why is that important? Well, first of all, they don't want you to know about that. So when you go in the grocery store and you see these shelves of wine and all these pretty labels done by fancy designers, and you see most of those wines are made by a handful of people, right? And
Wow.
they hide behind thousands of brands and labels to keep you in the dark about that. See, what they want you to think when they put a chateau or a farmhouse on the label, they want you to think that you're drinking from a quaint family farmhouse, when in fact, you're drinking from massive wine factories located in Central California. So that's kind of the beginning of the problem.
Yeah.
Then, further complicated in this pursuit to make wines cheaper and faster, we have industrial farming practices, which include irrigation and the use of chemicals in farming. And then in the cellar, we have the use of up to 76 FDA approved additives.
Jesus.
Now, why don't people know about these FDA approved additives in the winemaking process? Because the wine industry has spent millions of dollars in lobby money to keep contents labeling and nutritional information off of wine bottles. Because what they want you to believe is that it's just fermented grape juice, but that's not true.
Yeah.
Now, of the 76 additives, some of them are even natural. There are natural additives, and a number of them are highly toxic. So here's the thing: if you want toxins in your wine, that's cool with me. I just think you should have the decision, the transparency vis a vis a label to see what's actually in it, right? I also think you should have nutritional transparency. For me, because I'm keto,
Yeah.
I pursue largely a sugar-free to low sugar diet. It's impossible to avoid all sugar, but I'm very conscious. I read labels like all of our customers do. They don't have that opportunity on a bottle of wine. So we do lab testing for sugar, and all of our wines are sugar-free. And so the only way to know if a wine has sugar in it or not is lab tested, because you can't always taste it. Not at the level
Yeah.
that we require. We don't allow any wines that have more than 1 gram per liter. And at the serving level, that's statistically sugar free. And
Now,
so
how is all the sugar removed? Is that from the fermentation process that it's removed?
it is. So, how wine
Okay.
becomes sugar free or not, let's just talk about how wine is made quickly, because there's a couple of facts here that people don't know and they always ask. And the most common question that we get when we're out speaking or doing events is, how is your wine sugar free?
Yeah.
Well, it works like this. So grape juice is, of course, teeming with sugar. It's very sweet, right? So grapes come in from the vineyard and they're pressed, and the juice comes off of the grapes. And it goes into a tank, and then this is a key difference between commercial wine and natural wine, is what type of yeast is used. We'll get to that in a moment, but let's
Okay.
just say that the yeast inoculates, and the yeast eats the sugar.
Mhm.
And the byproduct of that is ethyl alcohol and carbon dioxide. That's how you make wine. Yeast eats sugar, that creates alcohol. If the wine is allowed to fully ferment, meaning that the yeast are allowed to eat all of the available sugar, the wine will be sugar free. But for many commercial wines, that's not what's happening. What's happening is they're breaking the fermentation before it completes. They use a chemical to do that.
Mm,
They break the fermentation before it completes. So, in the wine tank during fermentation, there's this little device. It's quite simple, but it measures the amount of sugar that's in the wine. So, you have an exact reading at any given time of the amount of sugar left that hasn't been fermented yet. The yeast hasn't eaten it yet. So, they use a chemical to sulfur dioxide, they use a chemical to kill the
yeah.
yeast prior to it completing fermentation, leaving what is called RS or residual sugar behind in the wine. So wines don't get sugar added to them. So when you see somebody, you see like we have these copycat, silly, kind of knockoff lookalike competitors, who are trying to be us, but of course they're not. And they'll say no added sugar. Well, no wines have added sugar. If you see somebody say no added sugar to a wine, that's either someone who's ignorant or is some kind of marketing ploy. You know,
Yeah.
because there's no added sugar, but how sugar gets in wine is by the winemaker breaking fermentation early, leaving residual sugar behind.
Got it.
So,
Wow.
so that's so. Then while we're on winemaking, just because another interesting point that a lot of people don't really know, some do, some don't, is that red wine gets its color and its increase in polyphenols and flavonoids, antiflavonoids, the healthy compounds found in wine. Um, there are more in red wine. There are about 800 polyphenols in red wine and just over 200 in white wine. And the
Wow.
increase in these healthy compounds and polyphenols, they come from the juice contacting the skin, right? So these polyphenols come from the seeds and the stem and the skins.
Yeah.
Red wine is also how it gets its color. So when you squeeze the juice from a red wine grape and the juice from a white wine grape, they're both clear. Red wine gets its color from contact with the skin. And so
Ah.
when the juice is pressed and it goes into the tank, they then take the skins and seeds out of the press and put them in the tank with the juice. And that's how it gets its color.
Ah.
And it's also where it gets this increase in polyphenols.
That's fascinating. Um, Something I've heard you talk a lot about too is actually before I ask you that, how prevalent do you think in just the Napa Valley? You and I are both in that area. Is known for wine, but how prevalent do you think glyphosate is in that area? If you had to guess, as one of the
Well,
76 additives that you were mentioning.
glyphosate's not an additive. So glyphosate is a chemical used in farming
Right.
under the brand name Roundup. Roundup is the single most applied herbicide in American vineyards. And you can readily, I can't give you a percentage, but I can tell you this you can drive down Highway 29
Mhm.
or down the Silverado Trail, and you can see which vineyards are treated with Roundup
Wow.
because they have a very specific look. So if they've been treated with an herbicide such as Roundup, um, they have a very moon-like appearance below the vine. There's nothing there, right? I mean, it's like stark, right?
Mhm.
And because there's no vegetation or anything, the and the soil here is pretty dark already. But at the surface level, when it bakes under the sun, and there's no vegetation or anything there, it takes on a little bit more of a lava color. It's a little darker, right? And you can drive by and you can tell which ones have been treated and there are many,
Wow.
many, right? You can see there's no living life under the vine.
Yeah.
It will look like this hard moon lava scape. It's a hardness and nothing growing there. And that's been treated with Roundup. It's very
Jesus.
commonly used. And if you want to know how common it is, just come up here from San Francisco and drive down Highway 29 or down the Silverado Trail, where you'll see thousands of acres of vineyard, and you'll see a large number of these vineyards with this appearance. So I don't know
Yeah.
what the percentage is, but we don't sell domestic wine. I don't drink domestic wine. I live in Napa Valley because it's an extraordinary place to live. It's very beautiful
Yeah.
and has an extraordinary lifestyle that appeals to me. And so, an extraordinary food that
Yep.
appeals to me. But and the weather is, it's hard to beat the weather here.
It's phenomenal. Yeah.
And so I live here for the lifestyle, but I don't drink the wine. There are no domestic wines that meet our criteria for purity and health. And so all of our wines are grown most across Europe. And we have 4 growers in South Africa and 3 growers in Chile. So most are spread across Europe. And these are very small family farms.
Yeah.
Very, very small. You can't make natural wine in very large quantities, and let me tell you why. So the difference between natural wines and commercial wines are quite simple. But there are 2 key reasons why you can't make them in large volumes, which is why we work with about 700 families in order to get the volume of wine that we need. And so a natural wine is always organically or biodynamically grown. And biodynamic farming is an advanced prescriptive form of organic farming. And so all natural wines are always organic or biodynamic. Before I go any further, let me mention this. Not all organic wines are natural.
Hmm.
So if you go into a Whole Foods and you see organic wine, that doesn't mean it's natural. It just means that it was organically farmed, which is better than industrial farming to be sure. But it doesn't mean it's additive free. And it doesn't mean that it was fermented with native yeast. So let me get back to the natural wine
Whoa.
category. What makes a natural wine? Organic or biodynamic farming, fermentation with wild indigenous native yeast. What's that mean? Well, commercial wines are fermented with genetically modified lab cultured yeast. Now, why do they do that? Why not just use the yeast that's present on the grape? See, every grape berry at the
Yeah.
time of harvest has yeast on the skin. It is collected naturally through the air in the vineyard. It's called native indigenous yeast. It's a wild yeast. All natural wines are fermented with wild native yeast. The problem with wild native yeast is you can't make wine in very large volumes, and it's very temperamental and difficult to work with, right?
Mm.
So now the genetically modified yeast are very hardy, very easy to work with, and you make wine in very large volumes with very low risk. And so the the winemakers use this commercial yeast uh, for a variety of reasons, the ones I just discussed. Plus, these genetically modified yeast will withstand a higher alcohol environment. A high
Mm.
alcohol environment will kill a native yeast. These yeast are modified to withstand an alcohol environment of 18 to 20% alcohol.
Wow.
In addition to that, you can buy these yeast in flavor profiles. So let's just say that you farm an industrial crappy grape in Central California, but you want it to taste like it's from Italy. They have a yeast for that, right?
Wow.
So, so that's, um, and thirdly, natural wines are additive free. And so these 76 additives I mentioned, color agents, most common selling one is called Mega Purple. See, Americans believe that the darker a red wine is, the higher quality it is. There's no truth to that. I will tell you just the opposite. But you can get these deeper colors by using additives and color agents. And
Yeah.
so there are no additives in natural wine. So in our case, in dry farm wines, where we have a certification, so less than 1/10 of 1% of wines grown in the world are natural. So they're very rare. They're
Wow.
difficult to find. We're the largest buyer and seller of natural wines in the world. And so the, you know, dry farm wines has a certification process that goes over and above just being natural, right? So we require that all wines are 12.5% or lower in alcohol. We have wines as low as 7%. And I'll comment on that to this extent. This really surprises most people to hear me say that alcohol is a very dangerous neurotoxin and it ruins millions of lives a year. And so we believe if you're going to drink alcohol, that you should drink moderately. And
Yeah.
how am I going to drink moderately since I drink a bottle a night? I'm going to drink moderately by drinking a lower alcohol wine. Most of the wines I drink are between 9 and 11%.
Okay.
Last night I was drinking 10% wines. So that doesn't sound different from 15%, but it's an enormous difference. It's an
Wow.
enormous difference, both on how you feel, how you sleep, and how you get up, right? And so most people I know don't have a glass of wine, they have several, right? And so the only way to moderate that several glasses is to start with lower alcohol in the first place.
Right.
So, so we don't sell any wines over 12.5%. And in addition to that, we do independent lab testing for purity. And among the things we're testing for are even alcohol. See, alcohol stated on a wine bottle, not that most people pay much attention to it, but alcohol stated on a wine bottle by law is not required to be accurate. And so it's another collusion between the US government and the wine industry.
Wow.
So so the so we're testing for sugar as well because we want to drink sugar-free wine. And again, I might add of all the wines we taste, and all wines that we taste must be natural. They must be 12.5% or less in alcohol. Of all the wines we taste, we only accept 31% into our portfolio. The others are either fail on lab tests of some kind or on aesthetic, the taste. And
Yeah.
so, we're extremely, extremely fanatical about taste and about quality. And um, so our certification process, we're also testing for mycotoxins and mold.
Is that a
Um,
big problem in the wine industry?
we don't know.
Mycotoxins? Ah,
We don't know. I'll tell you why we don't know. Because there's no requirement for testing in the US.
yeah.
Now, if you're in Europe, if you're an EU producer, you produce wine in Europe, you must test for mold by law.
Wow.
The US doesn't require it. And so the only time a US wine gets tested for mold is if it's exported to Europe, where it is required, right? And so we believe all wine should be tested for mycotoxins. But so anyway, so we have a certification process that our customers trust because they know us, and they know that we're committed to this way of life. That we drink the same wines that we sell, that we're committed to a sugar-free, low-carb, healthier lifestyle. We're committed to a way of life, right? So it's not some marketing. Right now, there's a lot of buzz in the press about clean wines. We've got all these knockoff competitors. Even Cameron Diaz introduced a quote clean wine and got bamboozled in the press over it because it's misleading, right? I don't know what clean wine means, right? That's just a marketing phrase. And so the you know we are committed to a natural way of life and committed to an organic way of life and committed to a way of eating and living. And people who know us understand that commitment. Therefore, they trust that we have been as fanatical about our lifestyle as we are about our wine, right? And so
Yeah.
it's a credible. It makes for a credible presentation.
Yeah. And I can tell you, I've been drinking. Thanks to you, I've been drinking, organic biodynamic wines for the last couple of years, specifically now just dry farm. And it's a big difference, just the way you feel after multiple glasses. I'll have like a glass a night or maybe a couple. I remember I went out in San Francisco with a friend not too long ago. And again, like you said, I feel great after drinking your wine. I don't have any issues. I sleep fine. I feel great. We went to some, I don't know, some bar restaurant in the city, and I had one glass of wine at this place, and I felt trashed. I mean, I couldn't believe it. Like I felt kind of a little bit like brain fog, not like inebriated, but just trashed is like the best way I could say it. And so, man, I just left feeling like I have no idea. The wine tasted fine, but the feeling in my body was just I was wrecked, and my sleep was wrecked that night, and I only had one glass. I didn't drink a lot, so um, it's definitely noticeable, and people probably don't notice that unless they make that transition because they don't have the awareness, or they just assume like, well, that's how you're supposed to feel. I always feel that way, right? When I'm drinking trashy wine or alcohol.
Yeah, it's true. People don't really know what it feels like to drink real natural wine. Because they just assume that drinking wine is this is what it makes you feel like. No, that's you don't know what drinking real wine tastes like or makes you feel like. So I can't drink it. I
Yeah,
mean, I don't. I'd just rather not drink. It gives me a headache. Um, it's just off putting. It tastes
yeah.
syrupy. You can taste the additives in it. Um, it's just so I'd rather just not drink. Fortunately, I have an ample supply of dry farm wines.
Yeah.
I don't have to
Hey,
miss many days of drinking, although I don't drink when I'm doing extended fasting. I'm just finishing a 5-day extended fast now, water only. So I don't drink during
wow.
fasting, but other than that, I drink every day.
Um, yeah, I was gonna ask you about that because wine being a neurotoxin, like you said, it's proven. Even though the wine is clean, I mean, that doesn't bother you at all. Still, I know you feel physically great, but any thoughts? I mean,
I don't know. Here's the thing. I'm in great shape. I feel great. I'm in great physical shape. I'm much older than you. And and so I'm 60,
oh
right? And
Jesus,
so,
I thought you were like, I thought you were 40s.
oh, you're nice to say that. So anyway, the I think things are working out okay, and I do a lot of biohacks, cold thermogenesis, meditation, ketogenic diet, the avoidance of processed food. I mean, just a lot of a serious fitness regimen, and so I am, you know, I I love wine. I'm not likely to stop drinking it anytime soon. I don't know if the alcohol is harming me or not. I'm doing the best I can with it. And I'm going to continue to drink.
Yeah,
Right. And so there could be a point in time when I say, I don't want to do this anymore.
yeah,
I don't know. Meaning I don't want to drink anymore. That
yeah.
could certainly that time could come as I age. Maybe when I'm 90. Who knows? But I or 100 maybe.
Yeah,
So I'm you know what what concerns me most and is the regulation of blood sugar. And
yeah,
and so you know and the suppression of insulin. That's
yeah. That's a big one.
really what concerns me most from an aging, longevity, brain health is the suppression of blood glucose.
Yeah,
And so I'm of the school, and there are many people who agree with me in the forward-looking health movement that constantly elevated blood sugar and hyperproduction of insulin is the cause of most chronic illnesses, including Alzheimer's, cancer,
yep,
heart disease, um, Parkinson's.
yep.
So maybe alcohol will get me in the end. I don't know, but I think the more important thing is is the regulation of blood glucose and
Yeah.
also autophagy through fasting. So I only eat once per day, and then I do regular extended fasting once or twice a month, either 3 or 5 day.
Yeah.
If I do a 5 day, my next fast will be a 3 day, right? And so I just believe very strongly in the power of fasting. I think it's the most powerful modality that we have in terms of wellness and longevity. The problem with it is we don't know how to dose it,
Mm.
and we don't know the minimum effective dose. Same thing with exercise. We don't know what the right dose of exercise is. Most of us probably over exercise.
Yeah.
And so these modalities, we don't have enough knowledge. I mean, fasting has been used to treat illnesses for, several thousand years. And so the fact is, and my thinking is that we simply eat too much and too often,
Yeah.
right? And so we just don't give the pancreas a rest, right? We don't give autophagy an opportunity for cellular renewal. And so it's so for me, those are the things I'm more concerned about than my drinking low alcohol wine. As I said, alcohol might get me in the end. I
Yeah.
don't know,
Yeah.
uh, but I'm
I
more
mean,
concerned with maintaining low blood glucose.
yeah, and I mean, I think you're definitely counteracting a lot of the effects, right, of alcohol. And I think it just reminds me of, to like, the blue zones, and you're living, you're not just drinking alcohol to get like drunk. Like, you're drinking alcohol because of just like, I've heard you talk about, like, you appreciate like where it comes from, and then it might even have a social component. There's this connection with family and other people. Like, there's many more things that, revolve around. It's not just drinking to get drunk. So I think, like you said, you're probably gonna be fine.
Yeah, people who are drinking to get drunk or checking out, right? I want to tap in. And when I say
Yeah.
tap in, with lower alcohol doses, you're not getting to that point of cognitive disconnection. So tapping in, is really an experience you have with yourself and with other people. So the beautiful thing about low alcohol natural wines is that you're getting an elevation of euphoria, an extension of creative, you know, expression, and just joy and love, and
Yeah.
sharing it with other people, and sharing these wines with this extraordinary taste and the stories and the terroir, the sense of place where the grape was grown. And see, wine, natural wine, not commercial wine, but natural wines are unique in this one aspect of alcoholic beverages. And that is that the same person who grew the fruit also fermented it and put it in the bottle and sent their spirit to you, right?
Mm,
So beer or spirits, they're not grown and bottled by the same person. Their hops are grown by some farmer and then they go to some factory, right? And so, spirits the same thing. The barley is grown by somebody, but and wine, natural wine, where you have a single grower producer, bottler, fermenter, is that their spirit, the spirit of the land, the spirit of that farm and of that farmer are in that bottle. And the other thing that keeps that
yeah.
spirit alive
So
is with
cool.
natural wines that haven't been sterilized. So at bottling, commercial wines are sterilized with sulfur dioxide to
Mm,
kill anything alive in it, including all of the gut friendly bacteria. Dr. David Perlmutter has written a number of posts and articles about natural wine and the gut friendly microbiome,
yeah.
the bacteria, the living bacteria that is in a natural wine. See, natural wines, because they haven't been sterilized, they're still alive. And you can taste that spirit, you can taste that living wine when you drink it. It doesn't
Yeah.
taste like a store bought wine. And you can have bottle to bottle variations because it's not been sterilized into perfection, right?
Mm, yeah.
And so, what the commercial winemakers want is a shelf dependable product that's going to taste the same year after year, the same shelf consistency, what we call McDonaldizing the wine. So, first of all, they're going to mummify it by killing it, and then they're going
Yeah.
to McDonaldize it,
Yep.
right? So, because Americans think that they think they have an adventurous palate. Like, but the fact of the matter is most of us eat the same thing over and over and over again. We're very habitual creatures in this way. And we drink wine in the same way, right? So we buy the same wine over and over and over again because that's what we know.
Yeah.
So they want it to taste the same, which is the unique thing about, as you know, as a subscriber, the unique thing about getting our wines is that you get a unique curation with every box
Yep.
with great wines you've never heard of, right? And so you have an opportunity to sort of travel around the world and experience things that you would never find here, right? From grapes you've never heard of.
Yep.
I mean, Americans know the top eight: Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc,
Cab
Merlot.
Sav.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
Cab is the number one, is the king of grapes in Napa Valley.
Yeah.
And, uh, and so largely because it sells for the most money, right? And so drinking these wines just gives you this opportunity to discover things that you would never come in contact with. And of
Yeah.
course, we have 100% happiness guarantee. If you find a bottle you don't like, we'll replace it for free or refund you, no questions asked. Right? That's just how committed we are to having an extraordinary member experience. And we also believe um, very confidently in the wines. Right? So
Yeah.
we couldn't make that promise if we were having to send out bottles every day. Right? But so yeah, so that it's really a unique elixir. I mean, it's just
Yeah, it
kind of
is.
magic, and it creates love.
Yeah.
Like spirits. When you drink spirits, you get fueled up, right? Like super fueled. Wine doesn't fuel you like that. I mean, the fact is, if you drink enough natural wine, the worst thing that's going to happen is you're just going to go to sleep.
Yep.
You drink a bunch of liquor, you're going to go out,
Yeah.
right? You want to know where the party is, right? But when you drink natural wines, particularly lower alcohol, you drink enough, you're just going to want to go to sleep,
Yep.
right? And that's a big difference in the alcohol dose. You get enough alcohol, you're going to want to look for the party. But as long as the alcohol is lower and you're having a natural product, you're just going to want to go to sleep after a few hours.
Yeah. I've experienced that. Hey, real quick, I wanted to ask you, what do like master sommeliers say about dry farm wines and these biodynamic natural wines? Because I just heard one on a podcast the other day, and that question came up. They said somebody asked them, "Hey, what about natural biodynamic wines?" And his response was interesting. It was very it was kind of like it wasn't dismissive, but almost. And he was just kind of like, "Yeah, I mean, they say that, these biodynamic wines are like this." He knew what they were, obviously. He's a master sommelier. But he's like, "Yeah, they say that, they're made with this blah 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 native wheat yeast and that therefore they taste better." And he kind of just said like, "Yeah, like I can't really say they taste better than any of the other wines." So, I'm just curious, like have you met other master sommeliers or other do they have any opinion? I mean, this is their business, this is like what they do and they can tell notes from all the different regions and
Most of them are trained in very classical wines, right? Commercial, no, they're classical wines,
yeah.
and so they don't know much about natural wine. That's not how they were trained. They were trained in these pedigreed cultural wines, right? And so natural wines are also relatively inexpensive, and so they don't get paid to sell. They're not expensive wine. Natural wines are not expensive, so there's no money in natural wine, right? These pedigreed wines are hundreds of dollars a bottle, right? This kind of thing. So, but the fact,
What makes and then on that note, what makes a bottle $100 versus $25?
well,
Is it just
mainly
branding?
story and pedigree,
Yeah,
and the perception of scarcity, which is part of the story. So wine is
got it.
sold through story, right? And so these storied wines, that sell for at release at $750 a bottle, or $500 a bottle, or $1,000 a bottle, they command those prices because they have created a perception, whether it's real or not, a perception of scarcity.
Yeah.
So that's what drives. People want what they can't have, and so there's a whole marketing book on how you create the perception of scarcity.
Mm.
by having mailing lists and allocations, and you can't get this and we can't give it to you, and so every wine we sell sells for the exact same amount, and this includes shipping. And shipping wine is expensive, so it's $25 a bottle, including shipping. And that's a very affordable price for a handcrafted fine wine.
Yeah, it
Right?
is.
And we just price everything the same to make it easy. And the so I don't know any master somms, um, and you don't see somms in the natural wine world. They don't understand anything about it. What they do understand, how they were trained on these big classical pedigreed expensive wines, right? And so, because that's where all the prestige is.
Yeah.
And if you're a master som, you're pursuing that as a profession. You're usually working in some exalted fine dining restaurant, where prices are, 150 to $300 a person plus wine, right?
Yeah.
And so, you're selling very expensive pedigreed wines, and that's what they know and identify with. Natural
That
wines
makes
are
sense.
cheap. Yeah, so
Yeah.
they just don't know much about it. In fact, people in the wine business. I mean, I live in the heart of the Napa Valley, and I have hundreds of friends who are in the wine business. Most people in the wine business don't know anything about natural wines. There's very little natural wine in the United States. There's virtually none in the Napa Valley because people just don't know about it. They don't understand it.
Yeah. Do you think, moving forward with dry farm wines, do you think that you guys will ever have your own vineyard in the Napa Valley? Do you ever see that?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I
No.
don't think so. Um, I don't. No,
No.
I don't think so. If I
Uh,
have a vineyard, it'll probably be in Europe,
yeah, that's what I was gonna
uh,
say.
but not here. It's not.
It's just not conducive, right?
It's very hot here, and it'd be very difficult to grow a wine of our style here.
Got it.
So, meaning lower alcohol, um, and just the style of wine that we like. It's there. We do have growers in very hot regions around the world, such as Sicily, which is much hotter and rockier than Napa. But it just, for me, I just making wine just holds no allure. I'm very interested in wine. I'm very interested in the wine other people make.
Gotcha. On that note, what's your favorite dry farm wine that you've ever
Well, I don't have a favorite producer. I do have favorite grapes.
Ah,
So and favorite regions, right? So for me, my favorite grape is called Pinot Meunier. It's very rare. It's grown in central France. I had a bottle last night. Um, my second favorite wines are Pinot Noirs from Germany.
mm,
So most people in the wine world and around the world think that the French make the best Pinot Noir. I think the Germans make the best Pinot Noir.
why is
So,
that?
and it's just a completely different taste profile. I mean, completely different. They're night and day. The Germans make a much leaner wine. It's less rich. It's leaner. It's lighter. It's fresher. It's just a different approach.
Yeah,
And so Germans make a very, very lean Pinot Noir. And so those are my two favorites. But I love Frappatos from Italy. Um, um, gosh, they're I mainly drink Pinots and Pinot Meunier. I like Schiavo, which is another. It comes from Italy, which is another very, very light skin, very light, lean. I like lean wines, very
yeah,
low alcohol, very lean. They are just a few grades above just drinking water, right? I mean, they're just very light,
yeah,
right? And that's the style of wine I like, and I like it slightly chilled.
yeah.
All
Me
red
too.
wine should be served between 55 and 60 degrees, but I like a red wine at 53 or 4 degrees. That's where my wine cooler is set at. And because it's just a little bit of a chill on that lean red wine that is just a few steps above water, right? It's just fresher and tastes better with a little chill on it.
Yeah, I agree. That's how I like it. Hey, Todd. Before we jump into the lightning round of questions, I just wanted to ask you: there's another wine that I'd never seen before until I was introduced to it via Dry Farm Wines, and I haven't had a chance to taste it. I missed out the last email, and that's orange wines. Can you just talk briefly about what an orange wine is? I've never heard of
Well,
that.
it isn't made with oranges. So it goes back to the winemaking discussion we had earlier. And actually, I did a wine tasting last night um, I did a wine tasting last night with a friend who's visiting from Chicago after we sent him to get a COVID test, rapid test yesterday afternoon before we meet up with him.
Yeah.
Um, but we tasted 4 orange wines last night. He had never drank an orange wine. And so we opened probably about 20 bottles last night, including a Pinot Denis, a German Pinot Noir, French Pinot Noir, so on and so forth. So orange wine means this. It means it's white wine that has had skin contact. So
Okay.
remember earlier we talked about, and they're oftentimes referred to as also skin contact white. They're only available in the natural wine world. I don't know why. They're
Wow.
delicious. You don't
Yeah.
see them in commercial wines. So here's what I mean by skin contact. We talked earlier that when you press the juice from a red wine grape, it goes into a tank, and then they add the skins in, and that's where it gets its color, its additional polyphenols, and also its tannin structure.
Right.
Just from contact with the skin and the seeds. White wine, almost always, well, all white wines except for orange, all white wines are just free run juice. So what happens is they press the juice from the grapes, and they discard the skins, and they ferment just the juice without any skin contact. Orange
Right.
wine just means that it's white wine that has also experienced skin contact. And in that skin contact, very often, the reason they're referred to as orange wines, very often they have an amber or orange color to them as a result of the skin contact.
Yeah.
They also have a number of other really interesting aromatic and flavor attributes. They can oftentimes smell or taste citrusy or with white flowers, like white orange flowers, right? And
Mm,
so they're quite extraordinary. I don't drink a lot of white wine. I'm a red wine drinker.
me too.
Last night was the first time I have drank an orange or a white wine in probably 6 months or maybe a year. I'm just not a red wine. I'm not a white wine drinker. I drink exclusively red, but an occasional rosé. But in the summertime, when it's super hot.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And that's how
that's
the orange wine is kinda like a rosé. Would you chill it, I'm guessing, or it's like a white
yes,
wine? You chill it?
it needs to be cold, just like a
Okay.
white wine.
Very cool. Alright, you ready for the, lightning round of questions for it?
Yeah, 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 get on it.
Alright, if the old you could see the new you, what would the new you say?
You should have started meditating earlier.
Mm, wow, that powerful. That's awesome. What are some choices that you think you made that, made you who you are today?
Bad choices,
That's awesome.
failure.
Yeah.
Failure is our most indelible teacher, right? So success is doesn't teach you much. It's just a lot of shiny things. Failure is indelible. So bad choices.
That's great. What are some, exciting projects that you're working on right now?
The most exciting thing that we're working on at the moment, we are working on a botanical wine collection. Very low
Ooh,
alcohol. We've only sold one. It was our fastest selling promo ever. We introduced an elderflower sparkling 7% botanical wine. It's made with elderflowers and grape must, and very interesting. It's made in Austria. So we're working with this Austrian farm to now develop more of these. They're going to be lower alcohol. They're going to be between 4.5% and 7% alcohol. And so that's the most exciting. We have a tasting this Friday of some new botanical wines that are made with rose hips and other herbs and things coming from this Austrian farm that are all super
ooh,
low
yeah.
alcohol. That's kind of the most exciting project that we have at the moment.
That's awesome. I know you've mentioned books in the past. Any books that you'd recommend someone read that most impacted your life?
The two most recommended books that I'm making in this order are The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. I think is the single most important book that anyone can read. Um, the problem with it is, or the deficiency of it, he does a really good job of explaining how the mind works and how the spirit interacts with the egoic mind. What he doesn't do a great job of is then prescribing, giving you a prescription of what to do about it. And
Hmm.
so for that, I recommend the 1912 manuscript um, called The Master Key System by Charles Hannell. And the Master Key System is a very short book. It was originally written not as a book, it was originally written as a 24-week correspondence course that you took through the US mail. And it came out in 1912. It is the precursor and the inspiration for the book The Secret. Um,
Ah,
and so the author of The Secret got her inspiration from the Master Key System. Not that I'm not a I'm not super bullish on The Secret. I think that there are parts of the book that are good and parts of it that are not so
yeah,
good.
yeah.
But the Master Key System is a more technical approach to the mastery of the mind and spirit.
I wanted to ask you quickly about that. I started reading that book when I heard you mention it. I'm a big reader. I love just learning about the subconscious and ways that I can better myself. I found that book challenging to read. I don't know if it's just because it was written in 1912. Um, and I know they have several different versions of the book. There's like a workbook that you can do with it. Do you recommend
I've
anybody get
only
the
read the
workbook?
book
Okay.
and I read it. I pick it up and read it and highlight it. And, you know, the very first lesson, um, lesson one, chapter one, it's not really a chapter, but it's the way it's put together now, is, it's really the foundation for the whole book. Um, and it says, it starts with much gathers more.
Mm,
And it is equally true on every plane of existence that loss also leads to greater loss. Now, what that's saying is that when we lead with heart and abundance and we believe in abundance and we lead with abundance, we're going to have and attract more abundance. And when we lead with loss and fear, we're going to attract more loss, right? And so
yeah.
that's a bit of the law of attraction. So
Yeah.
as we think, so we become. As we manifest, and we're manifesting every day, all day long, thousands of times we're manifesting. The question is, are we intentional in that manifestations? And are we aware of our manifestations? And so we're all manifesting.
Yeah.
Every thought we have leads to a manifestation. The question is, are we leading with intention or not? And so, yeah, the book is a little bit heady, but I keep it in my backpack all the time, and it's been all highlighted up. And sometimes I just open it up on a plane. And I think on the Power of Now, I recommend both listening to the Audible because Eckhart
Yeah.
Tolle reads it, and he has this extraordinary kind of voice, and so it's you get a very different experience from hearing it versus reading it. And I recommend both. But yeah, so the Master Key System is just really this concept of as we think we become.
Yeah.
And then he carries out, a lot of technical versions of that. But every, you know, meditation and every um, manifestation teaches us, how to respond as opposed to react, right? And so Viktor Frankl, who wrote, one of the largest best-selling books of all time called Man's Search for Meaning, wrote that, you know, this, and the book was about his experience in concentration camps in Germany. And he writes about the people who survived versus the people who didn't survive. And he says that the space between the stimulus and your response, right? Because let's say somebody cuts us off in traffic and we have an instant response to it, right?
Right.
Or we have an instant reaction to it. So, you know, we'll talk about that in a moment, about that getting cut off and how what your response should be as opposed to your reaction. But he says the time and space between the stimulus and your reaction is your power and your freedom. And so, what you want to do is be able to extend that space between, and age and wisdom helps you do this. You want to extend that space between the stimulus and your response to it, right? That's where you find patience and silence. And
Yeah.
so when somebody cuts you off in traffic, the way I want to approach that is the manifestation that I'm glad I'm not that person in that hurry, right? I
Yeah.
don't know why they're in that hurry. It could be that maybe they have a bleeding child in the seat that I can't see and they're trying to get to the hospital. Or it could be that you're just so troubled and so wound up and so stressed out that they just feed on this energy. Well, I'm also glad I'm not that person,
Yeah.
right? And so I just want to get out of their way, right?
Yeah.
And just let them go, right? If you're in that big of a hurry to get around me, come on around,
Yeah.
right? And so it's just being able to slow everything down. That's the power of meditation, is being able to slow everything down to slow motion, right? Which is very effective in business, because in business, everybody wants you to make a decision. They're trying to sell you something. They want to push you into something. You want to hear your response to it. And silence is the most powerful response you can have, right? So you're just silent. It's awkward. They're waiting for you to make a response, but you don't. And then they're forced to follow up with another response, right? So I mean,
Right.
it's very important to have silence and patience. And then it's like, and well, what do you think? Well, I'm going to consider that, right? And so it's
Mm.
like it just gives, the more time you can build in, the more contemplative you can be in your decision.
Yeah. I love that, man. Thank you. I'm gonna go back and read the Master Key because there's a lot of good nuggets in there. But it's probably one of those ones that I have to pick up once a year and just you kind of build layers over it. Probably every time you
No,
read it,
no, good,
you
no
get
time. Look,
something new.
it was a 24, it was a 24-week correspondence. So you only got one section, right, for a week.
Yeah.
And then you go to the next section for another week. So you weren't digesting the whole thing like, like reading a book.
Right. Right.
You were sitting with one section, intentionally sort of studying this one section, right, before you go to section 2 and 3 and 4.
Yeah. Very cool. Anybody in the biohacking or wellness world that inspires you, or anybody that you follow?
Well, inspirationally, my dear friend Mark Sisson, who's been a terrific inspiration, was the first major health authority to endorse dry farm wines. Um, and so, and we've enjoyed a meaningful, loving friendship over the last 5 or 6 years. So he inspires me most. I mean, he's done very well in business. He lives a thoughtful and intentional life, and so I'm most inspired by him. Biohacking, that's a tough one. Um, I just don't fully sign on to anybody's protocol, so I
Yeah.
just take bits and pieces from different people. I like the proverb: "To feel is to understand." And so if I practice something or I experiment with something, I want to know how it feels to me, right? I
Yeah.
also don't do a lot of supplements. I don't take a lot of stuff in my body other than natural food and a lot of natural wine. You know, I don't,
Yeah.
I don't, I don't take, there was a point in my life where I took like, a horse filled handful of supplements. I don't do that. I haven't done it for years.
Yeah.
I actually think I felt better when I stopped taking them.
Hmm.
I had a lot less expensive urine as well,
Yeah.
right? And so I don't experiment with things that I don't have a high degree of confidence in. I think if we live a natural life, we meditate, we live a life of intention, and we live a nourished life and a minimalist life of simplicity and low cortisol, and we live a life of peace. This is the healthiest thing for us. I do things like cold plunges on a regular basis. I think cold thermogenesis is like extraordinary. I do high sauna heat. There, but
What's your
these are
favorite?
things.
What's your
What's
favorite, like, ritual or hack on a day? I know you do it might be meditation because 'cause you've definitely clearly said that, but, in terms of, like,
meditation? Yeah, meditation,
yeah,
hands down.
bar
Until
bar none.
you, yeah, I think meditation is the most powerful biohack in history,
Yeah.
and it's
Is there a
long proven.
specific kind, by the way, do you that you do?
We just do a concentrated meditation, you know, um, with using some anchors, breath, anchoring to breath. We also meditate to meditation rhythms. And the
Yeah,
main reason to do that is an anchor. It's another anchor from thought. But
yeah,
the bigger reason to use, some sound in the background is that you have a time, how long you're going to be in session, right? So, because if I don't have a sound, I don't want to awake to an alarm. I don't want to like meditate and then end up with an alarm. And the problem is with your meditating and you don't have some sense of time, you don't know how long you've been in, right? And so with the music, like I have a 12-minute track, I have a 28-minute track, I have a 42-minute track. It's like I know how long I'm going to be in. And
yeah,
when at the end of the track, it doesn't stop, it changes into a different meditation music, right? And so I know I've reached the end. Now I might
yeah,
continue to go on, or I might just break at that point. But having some sense of time is helpful because if not, that's just something else you're thinking about,
right.
right? Like how long have I been in this? Like when will this, And sometimes, and you want to be able to like get lost in that silence where you're
Yeah,
thinking. And that look, even for people who meditate every day, such as me, somebody asked me this yesterday. It's like, well, how much time do you think you're actually absent of thought? And I'm like, maybe 30 to 50% of the time, maybe. And that comes in little chunks. It's not like
yeah,
half the meditation I'm without thought. It's like it comes in chunks. It might be 1 or 2 or 3 minutes where I'm in silence. And then something comes in and I have to push it away. Then maybe I find a minute or two or three of silence before something else pushes in. So, the goal is not to have an absence of thinking. The goal is to have an awareness and a control and the ability to impact how you receive and displace thinking, right? Only the enlightened are going to be completely silent. I'm certainly not enlightened, and I don't expect that I'll become enlightened, right?
yeah. That's great. Todd White, thank you so much for being on the show. Last but not least, where can people find you?
We are on all social dry farm wines. And in closing up, we have a special offer for your audience. So
That's
they
right.
can get a penny bottle of wine. You can put this in your show notes too.
I'm
They can
going to
get a
put it
penny
all
bottle
there.
of
Yeah.
wine simply by going to the link, and they'll see your face on it when they get there. When they go to the link, dryfarmwines.com/the hacked life. That's
Boom.
dryfarmwines.com/the hacked life. You can get a penny bottle of wine. Thanks for having me on the show today. It was a lot of fun. You had a lot of great questions, and I hope that there was something useful for everyone out there.
Thanks, Todd.